Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Politdigm podcast. My name is Red, and today I'm joined by my co host, Alpha.
Hello, everyone.
And today is the 15th of August. Today is a Tuesday, which is not our usual recording day. So, for all the people that are like, why do they keep always saying in the beginning of the podcast what day it is? This is why, because today is different and you must know it. It has absolutely no impact on anything, but hey, whatever. But yeah, tomorrow comes out the podcast. Yesterday came out the blog, which is written by Alpha.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's it for the intro. So if you want to go ahead and talk about the what you wrote, Alpha.
Yeah. Um, as Red said, I wrote this week's blog, and for this week, I wrote finally. By the way, I wrote a blog that has been in the making for like a few weeks, which has been on the current climate crisis that the world has been facing. I first wanted to write about this blog because I, sorry, I first wanted to write about this blog because I have a family that went to Italy on a vacation while the forest fires were raging. And then I started looking a bit more into the issue because frankly I wasn't completely aware of what had been going on. And as time went on, I started writing the blog, and then more and more stuff kept happening. So I just kept updating it, and finally, we reached a breaking point with Hawaii, um, last week, and I thought it was the time to pull the trigger. So, for those who don't know, but I think it will be known because this has been everywhere. It's pretty hot right now, and it has been pretty hot for the last few weeks. And as a consequence of this heat, the weather is pretty dry. And so any area that is highly with a amount of forests and a very dry climate has a very high risk of
Burning the
catching
fuck down.
fire.
Yeah,
What?
of burning the fuck down.
Yeah, exactly. First, we started seeing this with Canada, which had an extremely unusual and extremely violent forest fire season this year.
Yeah.
And as it was said by one of the experts, I'm sorry, his name is fleeting me right now, but I'm pretty sure that there is a CNN article where he was interviewed. He said that it's insane the amount of forest fires and the frequency of the forest fires that they have to put down and the intensity of them, and that it's due to this extreme heat and extreme dry weather. After that, we had a huge, and I mean huge, heat wave in Europe, which is caused by what is called an anticyclone. I don't go over the anticyclone, what it is in the blog, but I do put a link in there to Wikipedia so that people can understand what I'm talking about. But basically, an anticyclone is this area of pressurized air which causes hot air to rise and form and parts clouds. And I don't know if you know this, Red, but clouds are pretty important, right?
Yeah, I do
Because
remember. So yeah.
yeah, because one of the main things that clouds do is protect us from the sun, which you might also know as that big ball in the sky that gives heat to everything around it.
Yeah.
And if imagine this area that is already extremely hot and has no protection from clouds. What happens is you get an oven, an
Yeah.
extremely hot oven. We are talking over 44 degrees Celsius, reaching 47 degrees Celsius in certain parts of Sicily.
Yeah, I saw some areas in Spain which was like where it was like not at 60 degrees, but it was like almost there, like some barren areas or some shit like that.
I never saw
I
that.
was like, holy
I never saw temperature that high.
shit.
Like,
It was like some map where like it showed like the different heat areas, right? And there was like this area which was more towards Portugal than like,
yeah,
than in the center of Spain, where it was like low key, like it was like 50 plus degrees Celsius, and I was like, "Fucking hell, that's horrendous." Here it's like
Yeah.
30 plus, almost nearing 40, and it's already unbearable. I don't even want to know how fucking hot it is there. I
I
would
can give you
die.
the anecdotal evidence of a daughter of a friend from my family, which went to a swimming competition, like global competition in Spain, and they couldn't go to the pool because the pool's water reached over 40 degrees Celsius.
Hey,
The
nice
pool in the
boiling bath.
hotel reached over 40 degrees Celsius. That's insane. But
Sounds nice and cozy.
now we should do a flashback. So I don't know if you remembered, but this year started out strong, with the first day of January being the hottest day of January recorded ever since. Right?
Yeah.
The first day of January was the hottest January day ever recorded. And we saw like a lot of the zones in Switzerland having the snow completely melt because of the extreme heat.
Yeah, a lot of skiing
So
areas had absolutely no ice. And snow. I
yeah,
saw
yeah,
like photos comparing like just like 2 or 3 years ago, and there's like these like ski resorts, like these very famous ski resorts which had absolutely no snow. It was just rock and grass. There was nothing. I was like, holy shit, the shit
yeah.
is this is bad.
So we already started the year with extreme heat. It might not have felt like extreme heat, but it was extreme heat for the time. And then in late April, heat waves started forming on the northern hemisphere. And to top it all off, in the beginnings of June or July, it is pretty highly that phenomenon called El Nino has started, which I'm not fully aware of what it is because it's extremely complicated, but it's basically the following process to El Nina, which is when the water starts around the Atlantic start to get a lot hotter. So let's check off the boxes. We have hot temperatures, heat waves starting to form, an abnormally hot ocean, and then we had the anticyclone in July. And this all culminated into what has been the hottest July ever.
And the hottest year recorded
And the hottest year recorded
in thousands of
on Earth.
years. Yeah.
So, why? I mean, it's pretty
I
obvious. It's
mean,
pretty
yeah,
obvious.
we
Oh,
know
it's
the
hot,
why.
etc. Yeah, but there's also a bit of a small issue, which is, again, with the ocean. So, one of the reasons why the ocean is so important, it's because it helps to cool off the air.
Yep.
And I don't know if you know this, but currently the Atlantic broke all the records for how hot it is. And the coasts of Spain, Italy, Portugal, and some of the Scandinavian countries, the Atlantic Ocean has broken 20 degrees Celsius, which is 3 degrees above the normal temperature. So not only you have an extremely hot air all around, you also have an extremely hot ocean, which means that the hot air has a lot harder time trying to dissipate and cool off. So this just becomes a vicious cycle.
Yeah.
And then again, this all leads to the heat, but also the dryness. And with dryness comes fire. And oh boy, has there been a lot of fire. So we had fires again: Canada, United States, Chile, Hawaii, uh, Italy, Spain, Portugal, France, Northern Africa. But not just that, we had hail and extreme storms in Germany and in some of the other countries in the most interior parts of Europe. We had an extremely high monsoon season in southern Asia and blisteringly hot temperatures in Russia.
Yeah.
So this is not just a problem that affects us here, because the Earth is an extremely complicated ecosystem, and everything is connected somehow. That's how ecosystems work. You have more than one. Oh boy, the word is escaping me. Uh,
Factor.
yeah, exactly. You have more than one factor. And because there has been so much hot air here in Europe, as a consequence, there have been a lot of storms all around the world. We have seen extreme floodings in China, in Japan, once again, hail in Germany, extreme rain, and really high winds, lightning storms, which then also doesn't help with the fires. So, because this is such an extremely complicated system and it's so tightly wrapped around itself, everything is being affected by this phenomenon here in Europe.
Yeah, there's like I remember a couple of years ago hearing somebody talk about this, but it was like basically like obviously all these issues are caused by global warming. I think that's I got to mention
I'm gonna get into that.
the elephant in the room. Global warming is the cause of all of these things. But I find it funny when people are like, oh, it can't be global warming when there's certain places where it's colder than usual. It's like, boy, what the fuck are you talking about?
The
First of all, that's
consequence of global warming, you
first of all,
jackass.
it's the average heat is going up doesn't mean that as if you know anything about maths or have ever studied maths for a single unit in your life, you know that average means that it goes extreme to both sides, right?
Yeah.
So for example, like the average temperature is like is it like 5 degrees or some shit? It's like
No, no,
something.
no. I know it's 2 degrees higher than it should be.
Yeah, so but it's like it's not like the number you would think of regularly. You can search it up while I'm talking about this alpha. But the thing is,
At
like you
least
said, like
17 Celsius.
so see, it's like that you don't if you think of 17 cells, you're like, oh, that's pretty
Yeah.
cold. And yeah, yeah, of course. This,
Which is, I just want to say this, insane because not 100 years ago it was 1.5 degrees lower.
yeah, and that's the thing is like people forget is like this is the average, which means that the actual maximum heat that we are achieving each year is going up and up, and the reality is just like what you said, which is why I had this little small tangent is if there is extreme heat, it's going to have side effects like the
Yeah.
the hailstorms, like all these other things. So there's going to be not only are you going to have moments where it's supposed where it's when it's warm, it's going to get progressively more warm, and this and around it is there's going to be these weird little like mini climate phenomena which
Disasters.
like shouldn't be happening or usually didn't happen, like it being like 50 degrees in some places in Spain, but then in Germany it's like a fucking snowstorm. Obviously I'm exaggerating here,
No, it's
but
literally that. It's literally like raining hail.
so it's like, yeah, that's not normal. And then you have the exact opposite, which is each winter is getting even more extreme in some places because the whole climate ecosystem is completely out of whack. And then you
Yeah, like
have
the
like
hot air is blowing off the Antarctic cold air into the Northern Europe and Northern American continent,
and
which is caused by global warming.
And just to finish off my little tangent, so you can go back to the blog, but there's for example this phenomenon, which is like basically where not cold, warm water from the south hemisphere is pushed up into the Atlantic Ocean to the northern hemisphere, which is why, for example, the northern part of Europe is as hot as it is, because when you look at on a globe, when you draw a perfect line, for example, from Canada all the way to Europe, you'll see that you're gonna be at like Germany at like places which when you compare their weathers, you're like, holy shit, like these are completely different. Like Canada is like
Yeah,
this insanely cold place, Alaska, places like this, but then in Europe it's like it's fine, it's a little chilly. So and
a little
currently
snowy.
there's been researchers which been or basically going, okay, we might be fucked because that whole phenomena is dying off, and it might die off in the
Yeah,
next couple of like 1 or 2 decades. Some were saying like 2025, which would mean that in the north of Europe would basically have Alaska weather in the next like
I
decade,
don't want that. I
which
like
is
myself some hot weather.
so like basically, if you go to like the north of France, you're gonna be like in the middle of a fucking snowstorm in the winter, which is not something that really happens. uh, which
Yeah.
is so yeah, it's bad. Anyways, yeah, sorry.
So that was actually a great segue for the next part. So you know what's funny about heat waves? Heat waves aren't that common. At least aren't supposed to. The average is like one big heat wave every 250 years ish. I can actually pull up the article. It's in the sources of my blog. If you want to check it, I'm pretty sure. Let me go grab it 1 second.
I didn't know that
It's
was that little, honestly.
yeah. It's
I was gonna say like
it's
once. I was gonna
not
say like
that
once
often.
a year or some shit. Like in some
No,
places,
no,
yeah,
no.
not once every 100 years.
It's either from the World Weather Attribution or from one of the articles in CNN. So fairly high reputable sources, I have to say. But the problem is heat waves aren't just exacerbated by the currently hot air. They're also made more frequent. Why? I'm sorry, I can't tell you. I can't explain it. I tried to understand it, and I saw a 15-page paper in front of me, and I gave up. Uh, I'm sorry, it was 3 a.m. Um, but the current expected average, if the temperature breaks the dreaded 2.5 Celsius above the average that we're heading towards, is that heat waves will become a lot more frequent. And I mean 15 years apart in Europe, 10 years apart in America, and 5 years apart in Asia, kind of frequent.
Yeah.
And imagine what's happening right now, happening every 5 years in Asia. And you see the consequences that the entire globe is facing right now because of Europe. Now imagine what will happen in Asia. And 5 years from then, it's Asia and America, or Asia and Europe, or it's 1 year Asia and 1 year Europe, or something like that.
Yeah.
And this is all caused by global warming. You see, heat waves are extremely common, and we have survived heat waves for centuries. The problem with heat waves is the hotter the air is, the more frequent they are, and the worse they are, because everything gets hotter. The oceans get hotter, the systems get hotter, and so when the air becomes hotter, it already has another basis to grow hotter upon. I think that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
And why does it all tie back to global warming? So, one of the things that global warming does, one of the things that why global warming is caused, excuse me, is greenhouse gases. This is pretty well known. We have all heard of greenhouse gases. I think we also all know that greenhouse gases are pretty important. They are what helps us keep the ocean's temperature inside our little bubble that we call atmosphere. And there is a natural amount of greenhouse gases. The problem is, we humans got greedy. We built factories and we started breeding a lot of cows and started driving jet planes and cruises and producing a lot of pollution, especially when it comes into the production of CO2, which is a greenhouse gas. So the more and more heat is getting trapped. And as a result of that, one of the results of that is that the polar ice caps are starting to melt. Why is that bad? A lot of reasons. But one of them is the polar ice caps act as a mirror, basically.
Yeah, they reflect a lot of the fucking
They
heat
reflect a lot of the sun. One of the things that the color white is known for is reflecting light.
and racism. I mean, what?
Light, yeah. Uh, White is exactly that. It's the reflection of the waves that get into our eyes, and then we recognize it as white. It's a whole physics problem, which I'm not going to get into because I sucked at that class. So, white is exactly that. It's a reflection of light. Just like black is light not being able to reflect in anything. If that's why space is black, there's nothing for light to reflect on. And because the older ice caps serve as basically this giant mirror, the more they shrink, the hotter the area around them becomes, and the less heat is thrown back into space. So not only do you have less and less heat getting deflected, you also have the waters surrounding those polar ice caps getting warmer and warmer, and the temperature around them getting warmer and warmer. And what does this cause? Like we said earlier, it causes very chilly air to be pushed off in the winters. Sorry,
Oh,
and it causes heat waves to start forming in late spring, just like we saw this year. And that's really the crux of the issue. This is a natural phenomenon that's being exacerbated by an immense magnitude by a problem that we ourselves caused. And if it were anything else, I'm pretty sure that we would try to find something to deal with it. The problem is it's global warming and therefore climate change. And climate change is a result of centuries of industrialization and is caused by some pretty big companies that like to keep their pockets full.
yeah.
So, as you said in one of your blogs a couple of weeks back, uh, 70% of the pollutants are caused by big companies, right?
Yeah. But it's like the 100 companies cause 70% of all pollution on Earth. Just a
So,
hundred, just 100 of them.
so, so let's get into the minds of the typical capitalist CEO. You are the head of a big ass oil company. You like your oil company, you make money off it. And then these youngsters come screaming at you about climate change. And it might be true. Their data might check out. But you're not going to be alive until the consequences actually decimate us all. And you actually like to have your luxurious lifestyle like the piece of shit you are. So you
They
don't
don't
do
care.
anything.
Yeah.
You don't do anything. No, actually, that's a lie. You do something. You actively fight it off. You claim that it's fault. You say it's all a ruse. You lobby politicians,
Yeah, you
and
make it even
you
worse.
just go on your merry way.
The
Yeah,
fact is, if you want to put it bluntly, you make it even worse because
yeah,
since the period of time where global warming awareness has become larger, the same in the exact same graph, the amount of pollution has become worse. Obviously, we've had we've made policies, we've made rules, we've changed stuff around to make it better. But the reality is that company the issue at hand is not slowing down. In fact, it's ramping up, which is ridiculous.
yeah.
They just keep going and going and going, and they can't. They will eventually just cause the Earth to go into this dystopian fucking like apocalypse, and they will have what they want, which is the Earth to go to shit.
So
So
now I'm gonna get into a bit of a personal side. I live, and I'm pretty sure we discussed this already. I live in the middle of the wilderness,
yeah,
basically.
and near
I
the sea.
wake up at night with foxes in my backyard. I see eagles flying overhead. I have
This
found
random guy
snakes.
Jason with a ski mask keeps knocking at your door, and you won't go away.
I've dealt with them. Don't worry.
Oh,
Uh,
okay. Oh shit.
we have bats. We have rabbits. We have migratory birds that come here sometimes. I live in basically a village that is surrounded by beautiful beaches that are full with fish and oceanic birds and sometimes even dolphins. And I have seen it all start to disappear faster and faster. When I was younger, there were a couple of birds that would basically hang out in our backyard. And then in an extremely hot summer day where temperatures reached over 40 degrees, and I actually still have the scar of when I burnt myself in my dad's car on that day because it was so hot that the seatbelts were basically burning hot. We came home and the birds were dead from heat stroke in our backyard.
Sad.
And
I don't know why that was my reaction, but that's yeah, that's pretty fucking sad. As a child, I
yeah,
probably fucking just like birds.
you have no idea. My first reaction was literally to look at my grandmother and just say, "Why? Why did this happen?" And she was like, "It's because of the heat."
Can we eat them?
Why? Why is it so hot? I don't know, honey. It's just the weather. And then I went to school uh, the next few months, and then this big words called climate change started coming up.
Like,
And then the causes of climate change came up, and I felt pretty fucking pissed. I think is an understatement. Because Earth is beautiful, Earth is ancient. We are a speck of dust in its history,
yeah,
and we are
and it won't
actively
fucking
destroying it.
and
We
it
are
gives no
burning
fucks
it
about us.
down.
True. Like
We are burning down, destroying its ecosystem. We are making species go to extinction. We are laying down entire forests that are older than most people. We are desecrating ecosystems that are more ancient than a lot of our civilizations. And we all do it because of greed
yeah,
and because it's harder to change. I live around a forest area, and we had to cut down 50-meter radius of forestation around our house because one of the forest fires that happened here in Portugal was so devastating that a new nationwide law was passed to try to stop it from ever again happening. There are images burned in my mind of highways filled with cars of people that try to run away, burned to a crisp.
yeah,
We, I hate, I don't want to sound like a cheapskate and just like copycat Greta Thunberg, but our house is literally on fire.
yeah. I mean,
People
I'd
are
say it's even worse
getting
than that.
scorched to death. Like humanity's t- temples from ancient civilizations in Greece and Italy have come close to being destroyed and have been destroyed. A 150-year-old tree in Hawaii was burnt down and is probably not going to survive. And it makes me more than livid. It I can't express it. We are just imagine going to your house with your family inside of it and lighting a match on your kitchen and spreading gasoline on the floor and letting the match go because someone told you that if you do that, you will get more money. Do
Yeah,
you know how stupid that sounds? Your only house with your entire family in it, and you do it because you'll get more money. Even though after you burn it all to a fucking crisp, you won't be able to do anything with it because you won't have anywhere else to live. This is our only chance. If we don't do something about it, the only place that supports our existence is going to be destroyed. Do you get how existential that is? There are no way for us to get 8 billion people in Mars or the moon, at least in the next 2 to 3 years.
and I mean, and you're assuming that these places are livable, which they aren't. They're completely inhabitable. But to us, they're
Yeah.
not. Like the moon has no atmosphere. It's essentially impossible to live there, and Mars is such a hostile environment, which is climate. Mars's climate is even worse than ours. So, the fuck does it matter? Um, but yeah, the thing is, like, just to close off this topic, because you're very pissed off right now, and I want to just let you
I'm
chill a little bit.
livid.
But the reality is that I would say that it's much worse because the reality is that Earth doesn't give a shit about us. It's not a sentient being. It's just a planet.
Yeah.
It's this ecosystem. It's this thing which just keeps itself alive. It's not a sentient being. It's just a collective of
Well, some people
beings.
defend that it's actually an ancient being, sentient being, a sentient system. I mean, it's a Gaia theory.
Good for them. But
It's actually
basically,
pretty used in academic circles,
the reality
like
is
viruses.
the reality is that Earth is an ecosystem. It's a collective of beings, and it will do anything to keep itself going. And if that includes removing us, which is what is currently happening, it will do it without any hesitation. It does not care. It's going to adapt, it's going to overcome, and it's going to keep itself alive. If we keep going this way, in 2000 years, humans won't be on Earth. We'll all be dead, and the
You don't
Earth
have to
will
say 2,000 years,
in the year and the
a
Earth
hundred
will and
years.
the Earth will just keep going, and there will be other species which will come in our place, and everything will be perfectly fine. But we, as a species, if we want to truly to stay, and we want to keep our legacy going, or shitty ass legacy, we need to stop with this bullshit. Yeah. Anyways,
Yeah.
it's yeah, but it's a sad topic, and a topic that it's insane that like so many people are perfectly aware of it, but they have such a calm and collective sort of reaction to it. And I think that a lot of people just kind of have this vibe of like, well, fuck it, I don't give a shit, it's too late anyways, or like it is and it isn't. It is sort of too late. It's not like we're going to go back to how life was 200 years ago in terms of climate, but the reality is that we can slowly stop things. We can make shit better, just not it's not going to be something that it's not in the next 5 years which we're going to undo global warming. It's going to be something that's really going to take 100 years. But just being like, oh yeah, whatever, we don't care is dumb. But yeah, speaking of dumb things, Alpha, do you want to talk a little bit about, I mean, not talk about, but like introduce us to the topic that we were going to talk about next?
Yeah, that was a weird segue, but I guess I can.
I didn't
I
really
guess I
know. I
can.
didn't really know how to put us into
Yeah,
the next topic.
that was extremely heavy topic. So
Yeah, this one is a little less. It go from existential death and doom and shit to like this topic makes it feel so
yeah, I just got a
unimportant.
lot of whiplash. I got a lot of whiplash from that. I'm
It
sorry.
feels so unimportant and completely pointless. But hey, it's regardless, it's a part of our humanity or whatever. But yeah,
Yeah,
we want to talk about a little bit about AI art and the
yeah.
AI in well,
In art,
not just art. We can also talk about it just in
yeah,
general, because
we can talk
in
about AI.
because the reality is that in general it's an issue that affects every facet of
Yeah,
of humanity. And when we talk about AI, we're not talking about like, oh, the AI uprising, it's they're gonna take over, that we're all gonna die. No, the probability of that happening
I watched The Matrix.
probability of that happening is, yeah, not really great. And the reality is that that's not the issue at hand, because if that does happen, then fuck it, we'll die anyways.
Yeah,
um the
there is
reality
another issue that actually, sorry for steering the conversation from me, but before we get into that extreme heavy topic, I think it might be a good idea to give the background as to why we're having this conversation.
sure.
Okay, so both me and Red follow, or at least I follow and Red knows, a group called Corridor Digital. They are really big on YouTube, and they got famous by doing shorts with that had great visual effects. And then they opened another channel called Corridor Crew, where it goes exactly to that, the crew from Corridor Digital. And recently, they made a video called Anime Rock Paper Scissors, where they used AI art to make exactly that, a video about anime rock paper scissors, and I watched it. It was cool, pretty jank, but it was cool. The problem was they got art from an old anime movie. I don't remember the name, 1980 something, and they use it as the basis for the art style for the AI to use, and that stirred up a shitstorm. So
Yeah,
we're going to use that conversation basically from the point of view of I don't know anything about this problem,
and I know
but Web does.
way too much about it because I have nothing better to do. But yeah,
Exactly. So I'm gonna start asking questions, and Web is going to answer them.
as just to start off, as a person who is very passionate about, first of all, technology, it's something that Alpha is too. Something I'm very passionate about learning
Mhm.
about new technologies and how we can a better society with all these different tools and all these different things in our hands. Uh,
Superconductor
is something that very much interests me because I think that it's something that has been a vital part of why we're here today is because we have embraced these new technologies and we have constantly evolved and everything, and AI is a natural step in that evolution because it's something that we have talked about for decades, not to say centuries, because even before the idea of a computer really existed, the idea of an artificial life, of this like sort of mechanic of life,
robots.
of like the idea of robots already existed, before the computer existed. This idea that there's like this mechanic being that can come to life has been something
Yeah.
that's existed for many years.
Out of the
So
top of my head, the first mention you have of that, it's the Argonauts,
yeah,
where they
so
fight a giant made by Hephaestus.
So it's something that's not really new to us. Something that's always fascinated the human being. This idea of something that is near to our intelligence, but isn't biological or isn't human. By that matter, if you want to be even more broad. So obviously, when it comes to AI, it's we have always had this more recently because of pop culture and this sort of fear around AI of it like becoming rogue and taking over, which obviously you can be like, all right, yeah, there's a fear to it, but the reality is that the current issue at hand when it comes to AI is not that it's gone rogue and it's hurting people, it's that other human beings are going rogue and using AI to hurt people, which is to me much more important right now because it's the reality and the other thing is just this sci-fi thing that we're scared of. And the thing is, when it comes to AI, obviously the one of the main things when it comes to the Writers Guild strikes and the SAG after strikes is exactly that. Is when it comes to AI, how AI is being used to replace people in these positions. Now, obviously, AI as a tool is something very useful. I use AI every day almost when it comes to doing stuff in my day-to-day life. So it's something that I already have basically embraced as a tool, as something that I want to use to make my workflow better and everything. But that's exactly what AI should be. It should be a tool to make our workflows and all these different things easier, not something to fundamentally replace these important things or important jobs that we have fully, because that is the whole point of art, is something that is creative, is something that you're taking somebody's passion and you're making it real. This idea of first of all, which is the biggest issue with which that the whole corridor thing is going on with that, in a sense made no sense, but whatever, uh, is that they use somebody else's art. When it comes to using AI to enhance your own art or enhancing your own creative work, there's no real issue to that. If you write something, and you want to turn that, if you want to make that something, or you want to enhance that image or that script or whatever with AI, hey, it's up to you. It is what it is. But the entire idea of being like, all right, let's now take these already made arts and let's now use it to make this film, to make money out of it, which is what Corridor does. It makes these things and then it makes money from it, is pretty unethical. And also, you have to remember that whilst, for example, a, text AI things, I don't know, I forgot the name, the correct name for it, but text-based AIs, whilst they scrape essentially the entire internet for these different informations, and they take that and they are able to manipulate. Basically, they're able to learn from it, and they're able to manipulate it into different ways. Basically, to learn how to speak. It's not the same thing as analyzing a bunch of artworks and then being able to make something out of it. The best example I can give you is, for example, when it comes to AI generated images and to certain images, there's a high probability that you're going to get something that looks like a Getty image watermark on it. Because there's so many Getty images on the internet that these AIs have scraped these websites so much for that now the actual images are starting to get these watermarks. And the reality is that I believe there was a whole issue with Getty Images, which they basically went like, yeah, we didn't give permission to use these things.
Yeah.
Now, whilst obviously when it comes to the text-based AIs, there's also that issue. It's something that is much less easy to enforce because hypothetically speaking, any piece of art, any image is owned by the person who created it, or the place where you distributed it, etc. Saying that you wrote something on, I don't know, on Twitter, and then being like, oh, I wrote that, you can't take information from that, is not something that is as tangible and something that you can't, or the regular person, a regular person isn't really going to be able to take that and be like, all right, there needs to be some sort of control over this. Obviously, the idea behind all of this is kind of to stop plagiarism, right? Which is basically the issue with it, is
Yeah.
plagiarizing works and taking them as your own, and it's very hard to sort of put a, I wouldn't say a stop to it, but to be able to like
Probe
create
it.
rules around it. But the best example that I personally can give with my information and sort of my own analysis from it is, when it comes to images, that's the biggest issue I have with it. When it comes to text, I am not 100% sure, and I don't want to really comment on it because I'm not 100% firm when it comes to my opinion on it. But when it comes to images, I do think that there's a large issue with it. Personally, I don't want any AI to be, to be sampling my work or be sampling images of my face. I don't want that. It's not because I am obviously very protective over my privacy, as most people probably have noticed if you try to find anything about me. But I just don't want that. It's my stuff. I'm proud of it. I made it. I don't want any fucking AI to be, like scraping it for information and to take that, and then for another person to be able to have access to it. Not directly, but they can. Um, Again, as I've said before, AI as a tool, as any tool, as like any other tool, it's fine. Which is technically speaking what, for example, Corridor Crew has in other videos has done. They have used AI purely as a tool to enhance their videos. For example, they did a video where they used an AI tool which allowed them to do mocap without a mocap suit. That is
Yeah.
interesting. That doesn't, morally speaking, that's perfectly fine. You're all they've done is train this AI on a bunch of data where they themselves, had to train it to be able to track human beings and all this. And there's no inherent issue with it because they're not taking any information, they're not stealing anything, quote unquote, and then saying it's their own, or they've put their own twist on it. Obviously, when it comes to to telling this AI, hey, I want you to make a whole movie, or I want you to take this footage that I recorded and turn it into this stylized art thing based off of this other person's art, is not really great. If that person gives you permission, it's fine. That's the
Yeah.
whole point. They give you permission, it's fine. But the reality is that they didn't. And most artists do not want, to AI, to be able to take their work and to bastardize it or whatever.
Yeah.
And so it's something that it's currently very much plaguing the art uh, community, or not just the art community, just anybody that does art is not very fond of it, because that's the whole point of art, is something that it's deep and personal. It's something that's, it's a manifestation of who you are and how all these things work. And replacing humans with these AIs to doing all these things is not very, yeah, it's not great. And the biggest issue is, sorry for cutting you off, Alpha, because I know you want to say something, but
No, 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 no problem.
the biggest issue with which I saw people on Twitter having about with the Corridor Crew is that there's currently a fucking strike happening exactly about the thing that they did. You have to be
Yeah.
pretty insensitive and pretty unaware of the issue at hand to be able to do that. Plus they live in LA, which makes it even
In
worse.
their defense, they did it way before the strike. Like, they did it
Yeah,
7 months ago. So
still, it's something that they might have made it 7 months ago, but they posted it recently. And
no, 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 no. Wait, give me a second.
didn't they recently post the thing? I mean, I saw that, or maybe they did like a part two. I don't know. I did see
Yeah,
it being.
that's what I wanted to get into. Okay, so they did the first part 5 months ago.
All right. See that
However,
that's fine.
they
I
did a
mean,
second part.
sort
This
of.
is what I want to get into because what they actually did because they took awareness of the issue and said that they realized that why people were so uncomfortable with it. So they actually had an artist, which they paid, that was a friend of them, to draw the style that was used as a basis for the AI.
See, that's something that you can get behind. They're
Yeah,
showcasing the AI at work how it should be, and that's the whole point of this issue. We're not being like, oh, you're a bunch of fucking assholes. You shouldn't have done this. No, it's that
yeah, ban AI. No, that's not the point.
we're not trying to ban AI in any point, or we don't really advocate to banning AI. It's just that AI needs to be used as any other tool has to have its limits, and you have to have these systems in place. Mostly when it comes to jobs, where you can make it sure that people aren't going to get replaced by fucking AI. That's the whole problem that, for example, actors are having with it, is that in certain contracts they're being that they have to sign or that they're being made sign or whatever. There's places there that there's certain parts of the contract that says that from now on the studio owns your voice, your face, and they can do whatever they can do with it whatever they want. They can and they would and the issue with that is that they do, for example, deep faking. They do all these different things which basically recreates these actors with AI. And the reality is that yes, they might have signed it or whatever, and most of them don't sign it, but they see it there and they're like, wait, I don't want this, but they sort of have to because they need a job, right?
Yeah.
And they don't want that. For example, there's um I saw something, I don't remember what it was, but there was an actor which it was the Flash movie. There was an actor who already died who apparently he killed himself and killed himself because he was like really depressed about the fact that he would always be seen as like an actor who plays Superman, I think. And then Warner Brothers decided to put him as Superman in the movie, doing a deep fake and all that shit, which is
Holy
like
shit.
is a huge complete misunderstanding, first of all, of who that
That
man's
is
legacy is.
terrifying.
And the idea that even after death they can put you in films that clearly if he was alive he would not have wanted is insane, because at a certain point what you're doing is, all right, now actors opinions don't matter. You're just this object that I can put in anything I want even if you don't agree with it fundamentally when it comes to politics or social issues, or if if you like all these different things. It's terrifying, this idea that AI can do these things. And that's the issue at hand when I say that, oh yes, AI is scary and that we are scared of AI and all this shit. You're scared of AI because of this idea that AI is going to take over and whatever. But that's not the issue right now. The issue is that human beings are willingly, knowingly using AI in these ways to fuck people. If you want to
Yeah.
put it in a really blunt term, they are doing the thing that supposedly AI is going to do when it takes over. Like there was
Yeah.
this story of of parents. If there's like this mom or whatever, which got a call from her daughter saying like, oh, I've been kidnapped, or and I and some shit where they basically did this like whole there's like this whole call where basically the mom hears her daughter's voice, and there's like probably another person. I don't remember the story 100%, but basically there's like this person who's like, yeah, we kidnapped your daughter, we need like 500,000 or whatever, right? And these parents hear that shit and they're terrified because they hear their daughter's voice and they think, holy shit, my daughter's been kidnapped, and obviously they want the help. But the reality is that the daughter was fine. I believe the daughter was at school or some shit, and she was never kidnapped. But they used AI
Yeah.
to fake the daughter's voice and convince. that 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 she had been kidnapped. And if you're
Holy
afraid that
shit!
AI will do that when it takes over, remember that people are doing that already. Human beings are doing that to other human beings with AI.
That is terrifying.
Yeah, it's the limit. Like AI is way more advanced than most people are aware of. It's kind of scary in that sense. That's I'm pretty sure that to most people that's what makes AI so terrifying, is because of how they're terrified of the unknown, right? They're terrified of something they
Yeah.
don't know. As somebody that personally, as because I'm a person that very much is interested in it, and doesn't like being afraid of things that I don't know. I've educated myself a lot on it, and yet I don't know as much as other people. But it's something that I educate myself on because I want to be aware of its capabilities. Like the idea that for example, if I received a call from a loved one from a random phone number, and they say some insane thing, I now know not to trust it. I know maybe it's dumb for me not to trust it, but now I'm aware that there's a possibility that it's not real.
Yeah.
And being aware of these issues makes you way less nope, that's not it. Nope, less
Acceptable.
capable of falling for these issues, or these fake things, because you're aware of it. And it's something that a lot of us also need to be educated on, is the powers of AI, the ways that it's being misused, that its power is being misused. How can we use it correctly, to integrate it into our lives in a way that is positive and not negative, where people aren't losing their jobs, but instead it's making new jobs, related to AI, but it's also making people's jobs easier. That's the main thing with AI. It shouldn't replace people's jobs, it's to make people's jobs easier so that they can work less hours and do the exact same amount of work that they used to do, but they can still, spend more time with their families, do all these different things, and focus less on their jobs, because AI help them, spend less time on it. But they can still do the exact same job, earn the same amount, or more, et cetera, et cetera. So it's AI should not be replacing us; should be instead enhancing us.
Yeah.
Should make our lives easier. Should make us have to work less and less. And when I say work less, I don't mean it in a way of like, oh yeah, just don't have a job. That's not what I mean. I mean in the sense that we should strive for a society where we put less focus on working, and more focus
Living.
on living life, and truly experiencing all the different things that we have. And so an AI is, to me, a natural sort of step to that exact sort of utopia, which we've talked about previously in the podcast, which is, to me, what we all strive for. We all strive to not have to worry about food. We all strive to not worry about if we're gonna have a house to live in, to worry about if we're gonna have all these different things, and constantly, our technology is evolving towards us having that future. The issue is that there's a lot of people that don't want that future. And so they would rather use these technologies, which can be used for great things, for us to truly reach a point in humanity where we don't have to worry about these dumb things. But no, they're using it to make it even worse. They're using to take people's jobs away. They're using it to scam people, to do all these different things. And yeah, it's pretty bad, and it's sad, and it's a good representation of how people, instead of seeing, I was having this conversation today with my mom, actually, about this exact same thing. Is when you see something new, how do you react to it, is a big part of who you are. For example, if you see something that's like groundbreaking, this insane, if you have this crazy idea, there's several sort of reactions you can have, and one of them is going, I need to share this with the world. I need to, more people need to know about this. I need to 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 I need to publish this or whatever, because this is going to make people's lives better, and I need to do this. And there's other people which won't see that, and they'll see that, oh, this can make me a lot of money, and I can become very rich with this, and I can make the people around me richer, and all these different things, which I don't personally. I've never had that. I've never been in that situation. I've never been in a situation where I'm like, I could make a lot of money with this, because I don't. I'm just not that way. And I don't. Maybe that will be what inevitably dooms me, but I don't really care that much about money. Um, and I do much more care about people's lives, about how people around me are. For example, just before the podcast, well, obviously I'm not going to go into detail here because it's something very personal. But me and Alpha were talking about the future of Politdigm, and I was telling him that once Politdigm starts getting creating revenue, that at first obviously I want to be able, if at some point we have editors, I want to be able to pay them. If at some point obviously I want to be able to pay Alpha because he's an integral part of Politdigm. But
Thank you.
personally, if I have to if I have to make that sacrifice to if I have to make a sacrifice to my own salary to be able to grow Politdigm into something even greater, something that I'm even more happy with, I'm going to fucking do that. I don't care about having a salary. As long as the people that I'd work with me or quote unquote work for me are being paid fairly, and I believe that they're earning what they worked for, I don't give a shit about the money that I make. I don't care about it. But I don't know. That's just me, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. AI is a scary thing, but it's also a very good thing. Um, just to kind of on the end off this topic, but for example, something that I think that is a good side effect of AI, which is something that I kind of happy for, but also scared for because I don't know how exactly it's going to happen. But it's impact on education,
Yeah.
because this school year, this school year that just ended, was the first school year where AI tools were really that openly available to students. And this upcoming year, which is going to start in, for some has already started, for me and Alpha is going to start in exactly a month, is
Uh,
yeah, that's pretty shit. I know. But it's going to be the first full year, the first full school year that we've had AI tools available to us. And the reality, it's already fundamentally impacted the way that our school works. I've noticed that in my class, in my course, it's affected way more the way that it works than Alphas. But that's because we're also studying very different things. But the reality is that those anything that we used to any type of homework that teachers used to give us for us to like any research work or anything that had to do with writing an answer to a question in terms of homework, etc., is completely pointless now. It has absolutely, like, it doesn't fucking matter because the reality is that this last year my class had this one topic or whatever, that we had to each week complete this one sort of so it isn't a test, but it's kind of homework, but it isn't homework. Just that this, it was just like it had like 5 questions or some shit. It was like it had just a bunch of random questions where we had to research online and find the answer for it. And whilst the first third of the year, that shit was horrendous because we didn't know what the fuck was going on, and the teacher, in my opinion, just isn't really that great. We were all just like, how the fuck are we doing this? This is boring as hell. We're not learning anything, etc. But then suddenly, after around Christmas, ChatGPT really started, like booming. Everybody started using it and shit. And suddenly, all we had to do is get the question that our teacher wrote, put it in ChatGPT, and it would just give us the answer. And we just started writing it. And suddenly, all our grades went immensely up. And if you're like, oh, but that's dumb because then you're not learning, and then you're sort of your grades aren't a true reflection of what you're capable of. And yes, that is a problem. That is exactly what I want to get at. Is that if right now it's a sort of a good side effect of AI is that it's going to force our education system to change because our education system as it is just became completely obsolete. It does jack shit to evaluate us on our capabilities because suddenly our capability, the only way that it was truly evaluating our capabilities, has become completely pointless because we aren't actually doing these things anymore. It's just an
I mean,
AI doing it.
I mean, I can't get on a math test and pull out Mr. ChatGPT to help me
I know,
out.
but
But I do understand your point.
the reality is that that's you. You have a much more academic, a much more theoretical course, but as me, who has a
Yeah,
much more
for me,
practical
right?
course, which we have to each day write documents, or we have to come up with these different things, or we have to come up with catchphrases. We need to do all these different things related to marketing. We barely have to do anything now. We don't have to do any type of research that we had to do in these last couple of months that we had
Hey,
school
paradise.
was super easy. And even our teachers became aware of it at some point. And even they were like, yeah, I mean, fair enough. Like, you have the tools. If you don't use that tool, you're also being pretty fucking dumb. Like, if you have this tool which makes your life so much easier, then why not use it? Right? On purpose ignoring it out of being like, no, I must be an upstanding student and not use AI to make my life easier. No, nobody's going to do
Never
that.
do that.
Like, yeah, but you're a nerd, Alpha. You're a fucking nerd. And I'm a nerd, so you're an ultra nerd. You're even worse than a nerd.
I'm an
Um,
old.
you're an ultra nerd. Uh, but
Okay.
no, but it's true. Like, but there's even moments where you yourself will be like, I can't be asked. Like, it's like I have better shit
Yeah.
to
Oh
do.
yeah.
Like, I have this tool available to me. If I'm not using it to make my life easier, am I fucking stupid? I must be a masochist to be
I
able to
must be a moron.
like I must be an actual masochist to be able to put myself through this pain for no reason, whilst I can just pop up to ChatGPT and be like, "Hey, what the fuck is this shit?" And then it's like, "Oh, it's this." You're like, "Okay, cool. I'll write it on the paper," and then it's done. You don't have to worry about anything. You don't even have to think about the thing. You just need to. All you need to do is to learn how to use ChatGPT to get the best answer possible. Which, yes, it's its own
It's not
sort
that
of.
hard.
It's sort of no. It's not hard, but it's definitely its own sort of uh
Challenge.
sort of thing. It definitely takes a little bit to get used to it, to get the best result possible. But the reality is that having this entire school system that's based off of your capability of going onto the internet and of doing the best research possible, which 10 years ago was cool, was nice. You would go to a library, or you would go to Wikipedia, and you would read this thing, and then you have to be able to read this Wikipedia article and be able to comprehend it. You need to be able to rewrite it in your own words and do all these different things, whilst now you don't have to anymore. And so, personally, obviously, it's kind of pointless for me and you, Alpha, because we're at the end of this is our last school year of high school. We're
Oh yeah.
we're going into senior year, if you want to use the American term. So to us, it won't affect us at all. It won't, the changes coming to the school system won't affect us, at least when it comes to high school. But the reality is that you're going to have to move to a much more to a different system, a system that actually, that
Just like
actually
we talked about earlier, just because it doesn't affect us doesn't mean we can't be preoccupied with it and do something about it.
yeah, like you're going to have a much better system, because AI, when it comes to AI, the only thing that AI has replaced, quote unquote, in schools are those mundane tasks that we have for years been complaining that they do absolutely nothing. And all the
Yeah, like
actual valuable stuff like teamwork, all these different things, which much more valuable to a child's or a teenager's development of of working skills, are now going to become much more valuable, because they're the only thing that truly tests if they're capable of doing anything.
like
At least
here
when it
in
comes to my
Portugal,
course.
we have an acronym
Yeah.
for homework, which we usually jokingly refer to as torture for the brain, even though it's supposed to meet, uh, a homework. It's the best way I can explain it.
Yeah, it's wait, what? T
EP.
TPC torture. Oh, okay, I get it. I get it. Yeah, I was thinking too much in English. I was like, what the fuck? No, yeah, torture. T P means four, but in English, in Portuguese, starts with a P, and then C. It's brain, which
Also
also
starts with a C.
with a C in Portuguese. But yeah, it's true.
Wow,
And
how smart of you.
but thank you, Alpha. But yeah, I'm excited for it in the sense that I actually see some sort of hope, because at some point schools are going to be like, hold up, all our students suddenly
Wait a minute.
became
I'm
all our
right.
all our students suddenly became fucking amazing, and that's not normal. Like everybody suddenly became on par. No,
The dumb ones.
it's true. Like it's not normal for every student to suddenly be having max grades and shit like
Yeah.
that.
Little
It's
Jimmy can't get his head out of his own t-shirt, let alone a math test. Come on.
It's like obviously when it comes to tests, it's
No, that's gonna be awful. Just imagine
tests
like,
tests
oh yeah,
is
everyone, you get 20s on your homework, but then you go to the test, you have 8. What the fuck's
that
going on?
happened that happened to us this year. That started happening to us. We don't personally, our class doesn't have many tests, but that started happening where, our regular work would be great. Our teachers would be like, oh, okay, your regular work you do during classes, your homework is great, everything. And then suddenly we had a test and they're like, what the fuck happened? this
What
this
is wrong with you?
Like, no, that was the teacher of ours, our history teacher, literally went like, what the hell happened? This is completely different to how you guys were behaving in during class. This has nothing to do with it. Like, this is completely different. Your grades don't match at all. You seem like completely different people. And it's true, because whilst I hate tests, they are a thing that obviously tests only test what we know in that exact moment. So they're also not perfect, because tests don't test our general
Yeah.
knowledge. They test
Oh,
what
my
we
homies
know
hate the
in
tests.
that exact moment, which can be, affected by many things. For example, during this year, I had this one test which I was having an extremely bad day. I had immense anxiety during that entire day. I was having a bunch of anxiety attacks, and as you can imagine, I was still having these anxiety attacks during the test. And as you can imagine, this test was horrendous. It was not a great grade because I was completely fucked up. I know that I know what we were talking about? Yes, I could have had a much better grade if I was in the in the right circumstances. And that's the issue with this, is that they don't account for those circumstances. For example, back in like 6 years ago, I had an exam when I still lived in Belgium. I think it was like an English or math exam. I don't remember which one it was, but I had like this insane food poisoning or some shit. I to this day I don't know what happened. All I know is that in a week I lost like 5 kgs. That's how bad I was, like how I couldn't eat nothing. And at that day, that whole illness started was during the exam, and I was fucking dying. I could barely like walk, right? I was about to fucking pass out, and I had to do an exam. And of course that exam I had a shit grade. Did I know the material? Did I know the contents of it? Yes, I did. But it's tests
Yeah.
are pretty fucking stupid in that sense. They really need to switch that up, and they now need to switch up the whole thing with AI. So no, that's not the saying.
That's
Shori
not the yeah.
long
Like
story short, that's what I meant.
yeah, like for
Education
example, I don't know
is really
if you
gonna have to
remember
change.
this, but I don't know if you remember this, but this one time in ninth grade we were having a math test. Pretty sure it was in the first term, and I just like started bleeding profusely out of my nose, like both
Yeah.
nostrils, and it just wouldn't stop. So I was literally like holding like a cupped hand full of blood with
Jesus Christ.
my nose in the other, trying to write without dirtying the paper. Teacher came up to me and said, "Do you want to step outside?" I was like, "You're gonna let me do this another time?" I can't. Well, yeah, I'm not gonna step outside. And I had like 60 on that exam.
Yeah, like my ex girlfriend during this year had literally during a math exam, not a math exam, a math test. She had a huge panic attack to the point where she literally like passed out. She fainted, and she wasn't allowed to repeat the fucking test. She was unconscious. She was
By the way, here in Portugal, if that happens to you in an exam, you are automatically qualified.
like, oh, that's nice. But you literally, like, she was unconscious. She was unresponsive, and the teacher just couldn't let her redo the test. That is insane. Like, that is like, bro, what the fuck? Like,
Goes against school regulations for sure.
Jesus Christ. But
Yeah.
anyways, it's been an hour and 8 minutes, so we really need to start wrapping up the episode. Otherwise, we'll
Yeah.
be here for another hour. But yeah, as always, at the end of every episode, we have to do this little plug to our Patreon. If you want to support us, go sure to support us over on Patreon. If you do, you'll have access to our private Discord, where you'll be able to talk to us. You'll be able to, do whatever you want. Not really, but
Don't be racist, please.
within our rules, you can do whatever you want. Just have fun and talk to us and etc. But most importantly, regarding the podcast, is that have access to our podcast Q&A. So you can submit your questions there, and then each week at this section of the podcast, we will read your questions and we'll answer them. the best we can. We'll have a little fun with it, or if we just don't know what the fucking answer, we'll be like, yeah, we don't know, and then we'll talk about it another episode.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of our goal, is to educate you and to educate ourselves. So it's, if we don't know
Yeah.
something, then it's our goal and our mission. It's our duty to research that and to find out and then to educate you and educate us about it.
That
Uh,
is the best part of Politdigm. Like, we have the chance of sharing the bit of knowledge that we possess to the world, but also we learn with it.
yeah, like we're very. I'll be honest. There's definitely a little bit of sort of quote unquote insecurity that has come with it, which is like this idea that I'm like, what if people be like, oh, what is this dumbass 18-year-old, saying
And
this,
about
do they do they
stupid.
do they even know anything about the world to be able to, being, educating people about these complex issues and stuff like that. And I mean, yeah, you got a point. If you don't want to, listen to me and don't trust me because I don't have enough life experience, that's fair enough. Like, that's, you
Come
gotta.
back in 10 years or something.
But the reality is that, I'm also here to learn. That's the whole point. I'm here
Yeah.
to gain that experience, to be able to, in 10 years, be this flawless debating machine. No, I'm joking, but it's, yeah, it's part of growing. It's part of learning, and we want to learn with, together with our audiences, and we want to become better people, and we want to take that influence and all the learning, and then spread it with more people, and just maybe, if we can, make society a little bit better, or hopefully a
Yeah.
lot better. Um, yeah.
And if
Uh,
society just make your day a little bit more enjoyable.
yeah, true. But yeah, thank you all so much for watching. Is there anything else you want to say, Alpha? A little
Nope,
message at the
just be
end.
good people and enjoy yourselves.
And yeah, we'll see you all next week. Goodbye, everybody.